Screening and new. All right, I hereby call this Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting to order. We'll stand and do the pledge of allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we'll do the roll call and excused absences. I think we have Mr. Rockwell who is online. Mr. Hammond is online. And I guess we're gonna, Lisa was,
She's out of town.
yes, and that is an excused absence. I guess she told people, so we have an excused absence. So we'll go on and we need to appoint a budget committee chair. That will be the person who runs the meeting for the Boardman Urban Renewal Agency. So I'll take nominations for somebody who wants to nominate somebody to be the chair that will run that meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a nomination of Heather Baumgartner. Chair.
Okay, I have a motion. Does anybody else wish to be nominated? I think you're on the island by yourself. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You have the chair.
Oh.
You'll do fine.
So establish the ground rules for the meeting, the length of the meeting. It looks like in the agenda, the meeting is for 15 minutes. Any breaks? I don't think any breaks are going to be necessary. Is there anybody that disagrees with any breaks in a 15-minute session? No? Okay, length of individual speaking time. 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes for individual speaking time and review of process. Let's review of process.
That's pretty much what's left on the agenda.
Pretty much what's on the agenda. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to the budget officer for the budget message.
Thank you all for being here. I know you're all volunteers, and so this is cutting into your precious personal life, and we appreciate it. So starting, members of the Boardman Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee, I present to you the budget proposal for the 2023-2024 fiscal year of the Boardman Urban Renewal Agency. Since the establishment of the Urban Renewal Agency, 2 urban renewal districts have been adopted: the Central Boardman Urban Renewal District and the West Boardman Urban Renewal District. Separate budgets are prepared, one for each district, as each district is independent of the other. In the Central Urban Renewal District, we have identified the need to improve Southeast Front Street with an extension to connect it with Southeast Oregon Trail Boulevard, creating a loop road. The city of Boardman is the financial leverage for the Central Urban Renewal District. This proposed project will require up to $2 million for its completion. This project should increase assessed value in the area and in turn increase the property taxes levied, bringing in the money necessary to help repay this infrastructure investment. In the coming years, the property taxes collected by the Central Urban Renewal District will be used for that purpose. There are currently no planned infrastructure projects for the West Urban Renewal District. Having placed the 2023-2024 proposed budget in your hands, I ask for your review and approval. So now I ask that you turn to page 7. I will be starting with the Central Urban Renewal District, and I want you to look at the map just so that you can get that visual in your head of what area we're talking about when we're talking about the Central Urban Renewal District. Page,
That big blank space is now Amazon, right?
part of it, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
So on page 8, we have the actual budget for the Central Urban Renewal District. The taxes that are calculated come from our Nara County Tax Assessor's Office every year. And the grants and loans that is the $2 million that we're talking about, the city lending Central Urban Renewal District. So it would be a resource into the Central Urban Renewal District. And when we talk later about the city's budget, you'll see where that one is an expense or disbursement out of the city's funds. Other than that, and in the last couple of years, actually, the Central Urban Renewal District has gotten some funding from the Columbia River Enterprise Zone 2 and hopefully in the future 3. And it's all based on locations and so forth. And then there's a formula. So we get our final numbers, or the enterprise zone gets the final numbers from the tax assessor. And then that's how we figure the amount that we're gonna get. So we always kind of estimate. Other than that, the Central Urban Renewal District doesn't receive any other funding. All of our expenditures listed for the Central Urban Renewal District are for the improvement of Southeast Front Street. Central Urban Renewal District has previously done infrastructure projects, and all of those have been repaid back to the city as of the current fiscal year that we're in. And so Central Urban Renewal District will not owe anything to the city at June 30th, 2023. So at the start of the proposed budget, it's new. Well, maybe not on July 1st, but in that next fiscal year, its new debt to the city would be that $2 million that it's proposed to be loaned. We had a similar budget. So if you look at the adopted budget for 22-23, this same project was in the budget. We just didn't have enough resources, time and labor, and our engineers were so busy with our geo bond project and so forth that it wasn't able to get done. But it is one that we are very determined to accomplish. And so this next fiscal year, we're certain that we're gonna get that one going.
I have a question.
Yes.
So where did the grant and loan come from? What, out of the city one, which one did it come? I didn't see it. Is it like the general fund or is it the building fund or?
We'll get to that one when we're in the cities.
Well, I just wanted to know where it came from, or is that just at another time?
It's in the next meeting.
So in this meeting, I don't need to know where the money.
Right, in this meeting, you just get to know that it comes from the city
Oh,
and that it's a resource coming into Central Urban Renewal District. And then once we talk about the city's budget, I'll point out where that one is a
I
disbursement
got you. So I just need to know in this that $2 million is coming from
from the
somewhere,
city.
from the
Yes.
city. Okay.
Mhm. Any other questions? Okay, so on page 10, again, it's the map, but this one for the West Urban Renewal District. I know we give a verbal description, but it's really hard when it's, south of Wilson Lane, So the map is really helpful. Look at that. Okay. Page 11 is our budget for the West Urban Renewal District. We don't anticipate again any infrastructure funds that will be forward financed by the city for the West Urban Renewal District. There is a remaining balance due to the city from West Urban Renewal District for prior infrastructure projects. And that's what you see listed under transfers for $210,290. If West Urban Renewal District brings in all of the taxes and money that is expected and can pay back that full amount, then that will fulfill the debt that it owes to the city. And that's the only activity that I have for West Urban Renewal District. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, that's it. Those are our two districts in our Urban Renewal Agency. And so now I turn it back to the chair.
Do we have any public comment? So, I entertain a motion to approve the Boardman Urban Renewal Agency budget.
I move the Boardman Urban Renewal Agency budget committee approve the proposed budget for the 23-24 fiscal year as presented in the amount of $2,574,565. I further move that the Boardman Urban Renewal Agent. A lot of words, sorry. Boardman Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee certified to the Morrow County Tax Assessor a request for the Boardman Urban Renewal Agency for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by providing under section 1C, article 9 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS chapter 457.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So it has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? A motion passes.
Yeah, you can adjourn the meeting.
So, I move to adjourn this meeting. Or this meeting is now adjourned
Yeah.
at 7:12.
All right, I call to order the City of Boardman Budget Committee meeting at 7:15, May 16, 2023. We've already established that we have people here. The excused absence is Elisa Middlestore. We need to appoint a budget committee chair. I am now taking nominations for a budget committee chair.
Mr. Mayor, I nominate Heather Baumgartner as committee chair.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Oh, we got two. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I turn it over to you.
Okay, so the length of the meeting should go for no longer than 45 minutes. I think that's sufficient, Camilla? Or do you want an hour?
Let's do an hour in case anybody has questions.
So length of meeting no later than 1 hour. Probably take a break after 30 minutes. Okay, we'll take a break after 30 minutes. Individual speaking time is 3 minutes. And the process is presented in front of you in the form of an agenda. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to our budget officer, Mrs. Barajas.
Welcome once again. I will start with the budget message, which is on page 4 of your booklet. Members of the City of Boardman Budget Committee, I present for your consideration the proposed budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Last year, we made note of being post-pandemic and mostly back to our routines. The pandemic now seems so long ago as we have been busy with multiple projects, public notices, staff and council changes, and new software implementations. Our largest infrastructure projects are our water system improvements and wastewater system improvements. These include a new collector well, a water booster pump station, a new water reservoir with an approximate 1 million gallon capacity, the addition of a new 13-acre wastewater lagoon, including the land, and construction of the lagoon and wastewater lift stations. These are all funded through a GEO bond. Phase 1 of this project is near completion. The new wastewater lagoon is approximately 98% complete, and the new collector well is about 75% complete. Phase 1 began a year ago, and now phase 2 has had its bid, and the award of construction has been granted. Phase 2 includes the 1 million gallon reservoir, the water booster pump station, and the collector wells pump station. We are excited to see this new phase get started. In the first quarter of the fiscal year 2022-2023, the city completed the wastewater system extension out to Laurel Lane. This project was long overdue and was able to be completed along with the construction of Devon Loop Road. This is a great addition for the residents and businesses in that area. Another street project was the chip seal of East Wilson Lane. That was a collaborative work with Morrow County Public Works, and we are appreciative of their quality work on that project. This year, we also did some street lighting improvements along Park Avenue. And by recommendation of Umatilla Electric Co-op, we had some streetlights repaired and slightly moved. Currently, we have the expansion of City Hall in the works. This project is only about 12% complete, with an anticipated completion at the end of January 2024. The building department is excited for their addition and is actively working with the contractors and architects on this. We had originally anticipated the replacement of outdated water and wastewater lines along Northwest Columbia Avenue to be completed in the current fiscal year. This is now expected to begin in the earlier part of the proposed fiscal year. Our engineers have already been working on the planning and design of this project, and once all is complete, the project will be put out to bid. Southeast Front Street has also been getting a work plan put together by our engineers. This area has been identified as a blight area needing improvement. Although this project will be a central urban renewal district project, I mention it here because this is what the city is funding with the loan that is included in the city's budget. The funds from the American Rescue Plan Act through the established coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds are available to the city for specific expenses incurred March 3, 2021 through December 31st, 2024. The city was awarded approximately $832,700 and identified a priority project being an advanced metering infrastructure system, which would auto read water meters by antenna in real time. Due to supply issues, which we have all known all too well as still a persistent post-COVID-19 implication, we are awaiting the supplies needed to implement this project. This project was ordered a year ago, and only a couple of months ago, the supplies start to arrive. We are anxious to get this project off the ground. The building department has gone paperless. It spent most of the current fiscal year investigating and choosing the best system for its staff and customers. The software was customized to our process, and the go-live date was May 8th. The planning department, which has prerequisites before plans and permits are issued out of the building department, will soon follow in this system as well. We all anxiously waited for the results of the transportation study to come back, and for the most part, the results have arrived. Portions of the study are still being reviewed and have not been released to us. However, street repairs are the priority in the proposed fiscal year. The city has requested for a street inventory, which is being compiled by a street engineer. This will provide the city with a listing of the city's streets, their status and condition, and the suggested repair. The city is also following two big service requirements that are coming down the pike from the state. The state of Oregon is getting closer in implementing a recycling service requirement of all jurisdictions. Boardman is no exception. We are working with Sanitary Disposal Incorporated, which currently handles all our garbage services. Preparation and understanding of the requirements and timelines are the key factors as of now. The cost of recycling bins and additional equipment will be a city expense. The city is working with neighboring The second requirement of services to be provided pertain to services to the homeless. The city is working with neighboring jurisdictions to meet the requirements. Providing these two services equates a financial impact to the city, and the proposed budget is reflective of these. A variety of improvements and repairs scheduled for the proposed fiscal year, as well as allowances for unexpected repairs and maintenance, are also included. The city of Boardman has a trajectory of being forward-thinking and planning for future needs. Funding can sometimes be an inhibitor of what can be done, but the review, planning, and evaluation of expansion and needs are always present. The staff, leadership, and volunteers of Boardman show the pride that they take in being a Boardman resident. I thank you for your service, and I present to you the budget for the city of Boardman for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. And if we turn to page 9, we will have our budget for the general fund. As you can tell from my letter, we have been really busy. So when I said we're gonna have enough manpower to get all of our projects completed, you can see why. Which has been great and exciting to see how much we're accomplishing and how much more we have planned. So in our general fund, we're happy to say that we have a healthy amount of resources coming into our general fund. Our general fund is kind of our operational fund. It does have 5 departments, which public safety is one of them, and it's one of our biggest ones. Our general government is going to be most of us on the city hall side. Code enforcement has one employee. And then it also includes facilities and one department. But all the resources for all of those departments come into just one fund, and that is what is at the top of your page there. So the 15 million is gonna cover all the 5 departments.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Again, our taxes, we do expect about a $330,000 increase. That calculation comes from our Morrow County Tax Assessor's Office. We do allow a 3% for doubtful accounts because we all know that not 100% of everybody pays their taxes on time and every year. So we do reduce 3% of what is expected by the tax assessor. Just for that, we don't want to overplan. Our state revenue, we participate in some state shared revenues, which one is literally called state shared revenues. Then we have the Oregon liquor tax, and the cigarette tax that we get funding from the state. Our state shared revenues is the biggest one that we get, and we're anticipating a bit of a decrease only because that one is strictly based off of population numbers. And whenever we have a census, they tend to use that as their base figure again, and then use Portland State University's numbers in the future years based off of that. Well, we all know that everybody's census numbers came back very much lower than expected. So we're just taking that into account with the state shared revenues, but we're hopeful that if everyone else in the state has low numbers, then percentage wise, we might still be okay. But that's why you see that one having, that one being pretty much the only one that had a decrease in what's expected. We are happy to say that for grants, we anticipate continued funds from the Columbia River Enterprise Zone. Those funds have been very beneficial to the city, and that is what has helped us to identify that we're at about the time where we can actually start doing some really major street repairs, and which I'll get to that and once we get to that fund. But those grant funds have been very, very helpful. We also have under other, we receive from the state a long-term enterprise zone fund award of about $113,000 every year, and that is granted to cities that allow and have long-term enterprise zone agreements. So that's another benefit to enterprise zones for us, so, which has been great. As we start going now into the expenditures of each department, under our general government, we do anticipate having a full-time city manager for the fiscal year. Under our professional fees, that one you can see that it has really jumped from prior year's budget. I did a little bit of reallocating from non-departmental to general government, but this includes our auditing fees, which we did get a new auditor, and those fees are about double what the prior auditor's fees were, but we're actually receiving our audit on time and much higher quality. So we're pleased to pay what we were getting. Consultants, and we also plan on updating our developmental and our municipal code, getting those up to date, and we are probably gonna have to outsource that one. So that's a big chunk of that line item right there. Another one that has kind of a big increase is equipment purchases. Nothing in this building has been updated since it was built. And so things like a couple of office furniture and chairs are about due to get replaced. So we're hoping to do that in this fiscal year. We're hoping to tie it in with the building department getting their stuff so that we can get kind of a, majority bulk discount on the city side stuff, and then it'll kind of match. So that's some of the things we're hoping on doing here. Under public safety, which is our police.
Excuse me, the dues and fees, I was thinking about something else. Did you talk about dues and fees?
No, I did not. Dues and fees.
I was just, what would be the tremendous increase from 22-23 to the proposed.
So yes, thank you for bringing that up, actually. So dues and fees and actually equipment purchases for just about every fund for this coming fiscal year will have increases because we are having to get a new IT starting July 1st. Our current IT will no longer be providing IT services to cities, so we've had to make that switch. And along with that, because of some, cybersecurity risk management recommendations, we currently have in-house servers and we will need to make a conversion to cloud. And with not having the new IT quite on staff yet and being able to get exact quotes on what we're gonna need, we've allowed enough in our budget for just about everything's gonna be subscription based now. When you go to the cloud, everything is subscription based. So that's gonna be in dues and fees.
Okay,
Yeah. And it's gonna be across all of our funds and all of our departments because it's gonna affect everybody. The water, sewer, garbage billing, that's all gonna be software based. It's gonna have to go to the cloud. Everybody's email gonna have to switch over, our network system. And so across the board, all of those, you will see that they're increasing for that reason.
thank you.
Okay, under our public safety. We do have one more police officer budgeted. We're growing and being able to provide the 24-hour coverage and allow for police officers since they need vacations every now and then. And then, we can provide the 24-hour coverage if we're not fully staffed. So we are budgeting for one more police officer. And unfortunately, just like everyone else, it takes a long time to get one recruited and on board. But we're hopeful that we can get someone. We have two changes that we want to propose from the numbers in front of you from our police department in our seminars and training. And I don't know why I did this. Last year we had budgeted 15,000 and this year we only have 14. We'd like to increase that one back up to 15,000. And under repairs and maintenance, we'd like to increase that by another $5,000. And
Repair and maintenance for what? The buildings,
mostly vehicles,
all the vehicles.
mostly vehicles, yes.
Shimer just wrecked another one, right?
No.
Well, he didn't wreck
Yeah.
he didn't wreck it, but
We're basing that on, this year, we're having to do a budget adjustment. We had 3 of our fleet that had to have water pumps at $2,500 a piece. We had one of our chargers that the heat or the cooling system went out, and that was almost $10,000. We currently still have 3 more of the Fords that are hitting that about 60,000 miles. And that seems to be when the water pumps go out when they're no longer in the warranty. So
we're having more maintenance costs for the vehicles.
Yes.
and they're more expensive when you take them in as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm. And we usually would have repaired, some of these, but
still think
we
it's budget's
can't
too
get
high.
vehicles. So under our capital purchases, we ordered 2 vehicles to rotate out 2 of the older ones, June of 2021. And we still have not received them. We budgeted to pay for them in this current fiscal year. We're supposed to get notification once they hit the assembly line. We have not received notification yet, so they haven't even hit the assembly line yet. So we're thinking, this next fiscal year, we'll be paying for the 2 vehicles that we ordered a year ago.
And that's the 380.
Yeah, that's part of it. The other
Part of
part
it.
of it, yeah, those would be 2 nice vehicles.
115.
Oh, yeah.
We're not going electric yet, like other places are going electric patrol cars.
When you have to drive an hour to go to jail one way
Go to where?
to jail, so it's a.
Well, obviously, you probably would, yeah, one way, you could make that on the 235.
Then charge for 2 hours to drive back.
And then also, so the police department gets its own special award from Columbia River Enterprise Zone. For equipment and for paying part of our school resource officer. This fiscal year, we've got the body cameras, which are a 5-year, so it's an upgrade of the body cameras with a 5-year subscription included. And that's the bigger chunk of that capital expense.
What's interesting is I remember being on the city council in the 2000 to 2004. And the police chief really struggling to get $1 million budget. I mean, that's just where we've gone, is we've grown. And it's interesting that I can remember that far back.
Well, it's nice to say that our police department, well, we are all lucky that our police department can have the body cameras. That's still not a standard across the state for all police departments.
And I remember back then it was, the push was getting computers in the vehicles. That
We were
was,
way behind on that.
yeah, and that, I mean, it just shows the direction that we've gone, and that the city has always felt that it's important to support and spend the money on our police department. And they've always done that.
I think it's important to also note that our police department is proactive versus reactive, like a lot of departments have been. That's
Yeah.
good.
He just asked for 3 million instead of,
So on page 10, we start at the top with our code compliance department. Like I said, we have one full-time employee there. The real big change from last year's budget to this one is in professional fees. Again, that's where us wanting to update our developmental and municipal code. And code compliance tends to, deal directly with code, so that's their share of that cost. In facilities, that is for all of the city-owned facilities, so that would be the field house behind us, the parks that the city owns. Any of those are under this facilities department. Under service contracts, you see the big increase. We experienced an increase in repairs and maintenance costs. I think it's just because all supplies have an increased cost. So when we used to have about $2,500 a year in repairs at our parks, this year we had about $11,000 worth of repairs.
to the
So
building.
just in general, all the repairs, whether it's broken sprinkler systems,
Oh.
broken locks, broken doors, repairing faucets, just everything in any of our facilities.
How do I ask this? So why doesn't the building fund pay for all that?
Because it's not a building fund function. So the building fund is not like our physical buildings, it's for people who want to build on their property or commercial buildings.
Oh. I thought the facilities that we were talking about were this facility.
Yes,
And our building fund, it cannot pay for repairs to this building.
correct, because it's building department is not the same definition as what you're thinking.
But you can build a new building over
And it
there,
becomes a facility of the
but
city.
it can't pay for a
Oh, well,
facility
that one is
repair.
because the building department needs that extra space. The city hall does not, general government does not. That's gonna be all strictly building department use. And that's why they're paying for that addition
And we charge them rent
currently.
to our side charges them rent.
Because
That makes
technically
sense.
they're a different governmental agency, or that's why they pay rent.
all of the departments pay rent.
Got you. Thank you.
And then under capital purchases, again, I said, everything in this building is original. It has not had paint, interior paint since it was built. And this is all the original carpet as well. For safety reasons, we did replace a couple of patches on the city hall side. But it is long overdue to have those major replacements. And because those will be costly, they're under the capital. And again, we're gonna kind of coordinate that with, when the building department gets theirs, because it will interfere with, staff if we are all in the building at the same, there's paint going everywhere, it's probably not safe. Be breathing all that, either that or we're all gonna have to work with masks on. Which I don't see us doing that. But we have that planned, for later this year. And then under non-departmental, that's kind of for everything that doesn't quite fit in any of the other categories or departments. But under professional fees, we've allowed 42,000 for other consultants, temporary employees, recruiting, job postings just across the board, just general consultations, service contracts, again, that has to do partially with converting to the cloud.
So, may I? The professional fees, that's like a substantial drop from the 207,000.
Yes, because we were able to reclassify some of those and get some of those done, that were identified as a kind of a specific.
For professional fees.
Mhm.
You're saying that you just
So what?
moved to other places in the budget?
Well,
Identify where they need to go.
with professional fees, when I talk about like consultants, when we identify a specific project like the developmental and municipal code updates, we're budgeting for that specific project. And where it would be like just in general, it might live in here. But where if we get that one completed and done out of the way, we're not adding that additional cost in there. Now we're just allowing for the what ifs that come up or those smaller consulting needs that might come up.
Okay.
Mhm. So that's why we're down to just 42. And again, with converting to the cloud, we see that we may need some, consulting with risk management, our insurance companies and their consultants, and to make sure that everything has the smoothest transition possible and that everything's as protected as possible. Under community development, that has all the council expenses. That's you guys. It's also, if you remember a couple of years ago, BCDA came to a workshop, to a city council workshop, and city council agreed to partner with them and, small improvements around town. So that's an allowance for those type of smaller projects with them. For any park upgrades, and that also includes our tourism expense. Under other grants, so this is also a loan. Well, not a loan, it's a pass-through. So about 2-3 months ago, Rick mentioned at a city council meeting that BCDA wanted to know if the city would sponsor an application for a congressionally directed dollars grant, so that BCDA would be able to receive funding for the incubator building. And this is us budgeting that money going out. So in our resources for general government, I budgeted in case we do get that grant. And then here is where, if we do get the grant, BCDA would get the full amount. The city wouldn't be keeping any of that grant. We have not applied for it yet. It's not open for application yet. We just had to submit like the letter of interest. So as soon as that gets open, we'll update everybody.
So that's where that grant money would go, not out of the budget money.
Right.
So that's the line item that grant would
Right,
go
right.
in.
Well, it would go under our resources, but it would come out. of-
Right,
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
but then it would be allocated in this spot.
yes,
And if we don't get it, then this would just go to zero.
Right, that one just will go unused. Capital purchases, we are budgeting to purchase a vehicle for the city hall side. When Karen was our city manager, she was very gracious of always driving her personal vehicle and never charging us mileage. But it's time that we do get one, and we also have, you know, a trip to the bank and to the mail and to meetings, and so it's starting to really be noticed as a real need, so we've got that budgeted in there. The big number on here is transfers, so don't get scared, that 8.8 million, I'm not sending it off to, you know, La La Land. I gave everybody a summary of transfers, because it's easier to see all the transfers on one page than it is for me to tell you, okay, that's 8.8, now flip to, you know, page 14, and here's 2 million of it, now page 16, and here's 1 point, you know. So, in your transfers recap here, here's your summary of where all those transfers are going to. If we can, we usually try to help out some of our reserve funds, because ultimately, if we have some extra money that we can put into our reserves, so that we have that for needed infrastructure or major repairs in the different services that we provide, you know, like they say, you know, you save your money for that rainy day. So that's what we try to do. That's what some of those reserve transfers are. We also have our payment back to the building fund, because we did do an inter-fund loan to pay for our PERS unfunded actuarial liability side account. And we are to pay that back in 10 years. And so this is what our payment is for this proposed fiscal year. And they are recorded as transfers, not as loans or loan payments or principal and interest, because it's all city, and it's just from one fund to another. Any questions on our general fund?
So the contingency fund, I noticed that it goes down roughly $450,000. What is that about? Just so I understand that, that's all.
Right, a contingency fund is a line item set aside because really nobody can estimate exactly how much we're gonna spend in every category and every line
Mhm.
item. And so a contingency line item is allowed as, okay, this, you know, all the line items above, this is what we expect to spend, but if there is an increase in supply costs, or we have some unexpected repairs, and all of a sudden, oh geez, we need to pay for these additional repairs, we're allowed to make a move out of that contingency over to that expense line item.
So you
It would be-
anticipate that we won't need near as much as we did the previous year.
Correct.
So that's a good thing, is what I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And the change that we made for the police department, the $6,000 total increase, will actually reduce our contingency by $6,000. I'm glad you brought that up, because that reminded me. Okay, next we move on to our water fund. That's on page 13.
Excuse me,
Yes,
make a note that the 8 million that you have in transfers corresponds to our worksheet, the first, I guess I want people to know, understand that on the worksheet you handed out, that figure in here on transfers is the figure here on your worksheet.
We're at our 30-minute mark. Does anybody need a break? No, just continue on.
page 13, our water fund. Nothing outside of the ordinary is expected for a water fund, except for at the exciting time if we get our new water system going. So if you think about it, to fill a 1 million gallon reservoir is going to take lots of water and power. to run the booster pump stations, which are additions to what we have, will start to consume more power. So those are the changes that you're going to see reflected here. We're going to have an increase in our utility expenses, anticipating that those go live and go into service, which is exciting. And that's that phase 2 that I mentioned earlier. For revenues, you might think, oh my gosh, are we having a water rate increase? No, we don't have a water rate increase, but we do expect for the Tidewater project to start having residents in the next fiscal year. We have some other subdivisions who keep adding houses. A couple of subdivisions that had kind of slowed down, started selling a couple of homes. So again, more residents, more clients. And then in November of 2022, we had a new contract put into place with the Port of Morrow for their water usage. That was resolution 11-2022. So a combination of those is what brings us to the new expected revenues in fees and services for the water fund. And they have questions on the water fund.
With the changes in upgrade, is insurance not gonna go up? Or is that taking into consideration the upgrades that may happen?
In our property insurance,
Oh, that's for the property insurance, not for the water thing?
right? Well, that would be property.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, we already have them insured for construction coverage, so it's gonna be kind of a trade-off. Any other questions? So our sewer fund is on page 16. Again, nothing out of the ordinary for our sewer fund. Just excited that we're gonna be able to transfer 425,000 into our sewer reserve. Again, that's for future infrastructure projects and needs, which when we get to the sewer reserve fund, we'll talk about some of the projects. A little bit of an increase in fees and services, again, just adding more customers, but our 1 million gallon reservoir is not going to have more sewer, so that's why the revenue increase doesn't quite match what the water fund has as an increase.
So when I think of a reserve fund would it be inappropriate to think like that's like a savings account
Correct. It's
For-
like,
for
yes.
future? So like the sewer fund is for the daily business, the yearly business.
Mhm.
And if something's going on, we can pull stuff out of the reserve fund to take care of emergency things or projects or whatever we need to do.
Correct, as long as we have it budgeted.
Okay,
Yes.
correct. And that's,
But
Right.
that's why we leave, again, those contingency balances for those unforeseen or unexpected big item repairs. We have that ability in being flexible that way.
because I was kind of thinking ahead because I was looking at the roads.
You'll
The
get excited.
the
once you
street
get
fund, when I
Mhm,
already
yes.
saw that, so I
Okay.
was,
Any other
pretty-
questions on the
I
sewer
was
fund?
really excited
Yeah.
about that.
Well, I do have a question about the sewer fund and I have asked a couple other people, but I just want to be clear. Donovan Drive and Allen Court off of Columbia. Is my understanding that were not included with the new sewer project that will upgrade Columbia Avenue. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, I checked with our engineer and that is correct.
And so they are not needed, just so I'm clear.
Yes, so we now have to do, I think they call it scoping, so they actually send like little cameras down the lines, the water lines. And we have to do like so many miles or feet a year. But we were having some problems with the water line down Columbia Avenue.
Mhm.
And they scoped both of the lines and they scoped the lines down there. And so the section at Columbia Avenue that they're gonna replace is what they identified through that scoping.
Okay, and it didn't include the very end. That's where Donovan Drive and Allen Court both reside, is at the very end of Columbia as it starts to turn into Boardman Avenue.
Yeah, well, I verified with our engineer today and he said that, yeah, Donovan Drive and Northwest Allen Court are not included in the replacement of water and sewer lines.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on the sewer fund? Okay, so our garbage fund, page 19. We did have sanitary disposal. They actually were bought over by Waste Connections, but they kept the sanitary disposal name and logo. So I'm still using sanitary disposal as their name. Kevin and Miracle came about 2 or 3 months ago, approached the city council, identifying that when Waste Connections bought over sanitary disposal, they didn't do any rate increases, but they have been replacing a lot of garbage containers and replacing their trucks and just replacing everything that's been outdated and really broken. And so along with everything else going up in prices, they felt that they needed to increase their rates. And it isn't just to Boardman, it's all of the jurisdictions that they serve. To help kind of recoup those costs and keep up with having good equipment and being able to provide the services. They also added more drivers. And I know that for our commercial customers, we kept running into them not having enough containers. And so they've actually added more containers as well. So along with all of that, you know, they came to us and said, well, we do need to propose a new rate increase. It wasn't just a 3% increase across, you know, every service that they have. It was a little bit, you know, different based on whether you're residential or commercial and what size garbage can you have and so forth. But overall, the increases ranged 11 to 13% of the increase on that rate. So that causes our fees and services, resources that are coming in to just look like we're making more money, but it's just that rate increase that's being passed through. And then down under service contracts, we do have, let me go back up. So under other revenue, all prior years you see a zero. We have 250,000 in there this year. Again, we're working with them, we're working with the state on the requirement with the recycling program that we're going to have to implement. The state will have some funds for the jurisdictions to help get these requirements going. But we don't have how much we're going to be eligible for, what 100% of the requirements are going to be. But our city staff and sanitary disposal have been sitting in on all the meetings, and we're just preparing for that. So if we get part of those funds this year, that's what I have budgeted there. And then depending on where they're going to go, whether it's going to be under service contracts or equipment or supplies, we'll have to move some of the contingency to match where those expenses are going to go. It just depends on the timeline. But that's the anticipated big change for the garbage fund. Any questions on the garbage fund?
So does that include the recycling?
Yes.
When do you anticipate that could go into effect, in case I missed that?
We don't know when. We're still working with the state. We don't have a, drop dead date from them yet. But we have budgeted some of the revenue and some of the costs in this fiscal year, this proposed fiscal year, just in case, at the very end of the fiscal year, we've got to implement something.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's other revenue. So where are you getting this other revenue?
That's if we get any of the state funding for the recycling program.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Garbage fund? So our street fund, page 22. This is our regular street fund. Directing it to Paul. Don't get excited yet. It's not this one. This is for our regular, our guys sweeping the streets, snow removal. Every time somebody knocks down the post down Wilson Lane, it happens like 2-3 times a year. repairing of signs, stop signs that get knocked over, the small potholes that our guys can fill. It's kind of that general maintenance of the streets. So not a lot of big changes there, unless somebody has questions. Okay. So we're starting into some interesting funds now. So our building fund, page 25. It's still very busy. It anticipates to remain just as busy. I talked with Glenn, our building official, when I was working on his department. What's anticipated for next year. So a lot of these resources here is us working together, looking at what we have this year, what's anticipated for next year. And sometimes, things move just a little bit from this category to that category in the building department, but overall, they kind of almost netted about the same. So not a ton of changes there. The transfers in is that payment from the city, the 146,000 for the PERS unfunded actuarial liability interfund loan. And then under expenditures, all of the permits that we sell for Irrigan, Morrow County, and well, not Gillum County, they don't get any of it. Morrow County and Irrigan. We have intergovernmental agreements with them where they get a portion back of the building permits, mechanical permits, mobile home placement permits. So the permits, they get a portion of it. That's what you're going to see under contractual fees, the 1.1 million. We actually are going to have a supplemental budget for this fiscal year just to be able to cover what we've got to send out to the jurisdictions because we've been so busy. We actually took in more than what we anticipated, which means we've got to give out more than what was anticipated. So that just shows how busy this department has been. And like I mentioned, we have gone live with an online platform on May 8th. Poor Jackie here has been dealing with, working out the bugs. This isn't flowing correctly. This is going to the wrong person. So that now has an annual subscription. So again, dues have increased for that reason, which means we also have all of our inspectors have users. And for fire life safety reviews, we also have Marty from the fire department also be a user in the system so he can do all those reviews there. And then it all flows beautifully together. And it gives the contractors the opportunity to upload all of their plans, which makes it so much better than having to have mailed or carry in here the big rolls of the plans. So that's going to be nice. And then the other really big exciting piece at the building department is the addition. Their addition over here to the south of City Hall. Literally just started. They were pouring the foundation this morning. It was really nice to see. But the majority of the construction costs are going to be in this proposed fiscal year.
So the expenditure, so the difference between the ending balance and the 15 million is pretty much the cost of the building.
No, where it says construction cost of 2.8 million. 5 lines from the bottom up.
Right.
That's the cost of the construction.
Mhm.
And then in some of our capital purchases and equipment purchases, that's gonna be for like all the interior items that are needed, all the furniture, the desk, the chairs, the projectors, the phones.
Well, I was just trying to figure out how much the building's gonna cost out of the building fund.
It's projected at about, I remember it's 3.2 or 3.4 million, including all those interior supplies and expenses.
Okay.
So why is there a decrease in construction costs?
Because we will have paid some of it in this year.
That's why I think we need to build bigger. But
It always, when they pour the foundation, it always looks smaller than what it is. Once the
Well, I
building
know
goes
that,
up,
but-
yeah.
Glenn was adamant on 4 million, like 7 million.
Any other questions on the building fund?
No,
Our general reserve fund, on page 29. So yes, our reserve funds are kind of like savings accounts in a way. When they were first established, the city had to dictate what each reserve fund was being established for. And most of these were established for those major repairs, for infrastructure needs. And so that's what we use these for. Our general reserve fund is receiving a transfer from our general fund of $2 million. And we don't have specific projects that we've identified to come out of the general reserve fund, except for the loan to Central Urban Renewal District. So for Southeast Front Street, the loan, $2 million, this is where it's in our budget. Our capital purchases and capital projects that are listed here are because our backhoe and our back truck and our heavy equipment is pretty old. It's aging. We're holding, we're doing repairs and maintenance. We're holding on to them as long as we can, but in case one of them suddenly goes kaput, we're gonna have to replace it. And so we budget every year for those big item expenses that might happen and might come to be. We've been replacing, I think on average, about 2 HVAC units a year for the last 3 years or so for this city hall building. And I think we still have like 3 more to go that were installed when the building was built. So again, planning a little bit for those unexpected big item expenses. Any questions on the general reserve fund? Okay, so turning the page 30 is our water reserve fund. In our water reserve fund, our system development charges go directly into this fund. Our system development charges are exactly for future growth infrastructure costs. And that's why it goes directly into this fund. Some of our future expenditures in the water reserve fund do not include any of our geo bond projects. Those have their own separate fund because we have to account for those separately, and that'll be pretty much the last one we're going to review. But we've mentioned multiple times we need to replace the water line down Northwest Columbia Avenue. That's where it gets paid out of, is this fund. We're still, I think, needing a water system environmental assessment that'll come out of this fund. And then we're looking at possibly having to expand water lines down the Chaparral area. And again, that will come out of this one. So anything that's water infrastructure is going to come out of this fund, and not like our water fund. Again, that was more the operational. The questions on the water reserve. Okay, so the sewer reserve fund, page 31, works very similar as the water reserve fund. Again, the sewer line that's going to be needing replaced down Northwest Columbia Avenue will come out of this fund. So anytime there's a sewer water project together, we do divide the two, and our engineers are really good about dividing those costs for us as well when we're working on those big infrastructure projects. Also, we're extending water lines down Chaparral. We're going to have to extend the sewer lines, and then we do have a smaller septic upgrade that we're planning on possibly doing this coming fiscal year, and that one is planned here. And then again, we allow in both of the water reserve and sewer reserve funds a little extra in case we have a major break somewhere and we need to be able to repair those. Questions on the sewer reserve fund? Okay, here's one Paul's excited about, page 32, our street reserve fund. So this is our big focus for this proposed fiscal year. This is why we try to, stockpile as much money as we could into this fund for the last couple of years, because major street repairs are really, really expensive. And in order to be able to do anything that's gonna even impact a street, we've gotta have quite a bit of money there. So again, we don't have an exact list of which streets we're gonna repair, which ones get a chip seal, which ones get, you know, what type of. We have a street engineer working on that. They call it a street inventory, but it's that street condition inventory. And once we get that, city council will be reviewing that report and identifying which projects are priority for them and which ones we can do. I mean, there might be some that is like, well, it's a great idea, but we may just not have enough funds for them, so depending on costs. And the engineers are pretty good about giving us pretty good estimates of what the repair costs are as well. But yes, this is the one that street repair is gonna come out of. And we got 7.8 million for street repairs.
Exciting. I've been hounding this, not to say you guys don't listen to me, but who listens to me?
Well, it just takes time to, you know, have enough money. in
I
your
know,
piggy
but
bank.
this has been, yeah. Okay, so is that all the reserves?
That is the reserves, yes.
So my question is. How is there a percentage of a city's budget that should be in reserve? And if there is, I mean, should there be what is the percentage that should be in reserve for a city's budget, or is there not a number?
It's not really a percentage, it's more like 2 to 3 months of operating costs. You should have in your reserves at minimum. But if you only have that, and then you have the big unexpected breakages, you could potentially not have money to repair those.
So I'm thinking the school district, so the school district is not required, but it's suggested that they should have like 12% in their reserve. Cash carryover. Or those type of things. So I was just trying to figure, does the city have something that is a guideline for the size of a city? To be able to say, too much is too much, or too less is too less, not enough, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's the 2 to 3 months of operating expenses, and that is one of the purposes of the general reserve fund.
Of that fund, so for the street fund, it should
No,
be.
no, overall. So for the entire city, that safety net you could
Mhm.
call is in our general reserve fund.
Okay,
So if we have some major water line breakage and we spend all of our water reserve money on it, and then next month there's some other breakage, we're allowed to use the general reserve fund to move money over to the other funds. You can't take water fund money and move it to general. You can't take sewer fund money and move it to general.
correct.
So the general reserve fund is the one that serves for that safety net that you're talking about.
Mhm.
And if you look at that last line item, so page 29, the last line item in the expenditure was reserve unappropriated ending balance. So here today, I'm asking you to approve what I've listed as the expenses. And then that gets appropriated once it gets approved and adopted by the council. That means you've said, okay, it's reasonable what you're saying to spend. What we have in the reserve and unappropriated fund is what we're saying, we're not anticipating spending that money on anything specific. That's just our savings account.
Mhm.
So that's what that one is, which is what you're referring to.
Right, so I'm thinking, the only thing I'm thinking of is, let's say. A city was putting thing in reserve funds, but not spending it. And, trying to, where's the happy medium so that the citizens of your community know that you're utilizing the funds the best way you can. And not just hoarding them forever, you know what I mean?
That's why we present it to a budget committee and get input from multiple people in the community that's saying, this seems right for our city.
No, I don't mean in a negative way, but I'm trying to.
Well, that is one of the reasons why it has to come before a budget committee.
But what if you looked at the street fund and thought about it in that same light? Like this year, it only had $1 million, the next year it only had $1 million, the next year we got $2 million to start the year. Still not enough to do anything substantial. But now it's big enough to do something. So even though you haven't spent your street reserve funds all these years, you've been accumulating enough money to actually be reasonable, could reasonably do something now.
Well, I wasn't counting as we're just stashing money away in there. I don't believe I think we've been
Well,
spending our money. But what I was saying is, where's the happy medium of being able to make sure that if we put $11 million in there, we probably pretty much better spend $11 million or come close to spending a good chunk.
I don't think that's gonna be a problem.
Right, but I'm just saying, of the naysayers, I mean.
It's a balancing act.
Mhm.
It truly is. I mean, you've got to be able to say, okay, how can we project what's gonna happen in the future? How do we prepare for these expensive projects? And yet not look like we're hoarding money. And I think that's what we do. That's what we do on a regular basis. We look and say, okay, we know we're gonna need a large amount of money to do our street infrastructure upgrades and so we've got to build up that fund so that we can pay for it.
Right,
And I think that's what we do. And that's why we project. I
And
guess,
we don't go over infrastructure projects like the month before we're trying to get the budget out. It's all year long. And it's reviewing and analyzing what are the needs that are coming up. What do we foresee is gonna be a need in a couple of years? How can we save money to do this project, do that project? Your city council workshops. That's all part of the planning process. Those usually happen in at least once a year in January, if not twice a year. So the budget is a work in process. But we do leave some money for the what ifs and the knowns. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we only have so much labor resources that we can't do all the projects at once either. So sometimes we do have to prioritize which ones can we accomplish in the next fiscal year.
well, I get that. I don't have any problem with it. I was just thinking, so when I just estimated the reserve funds, that's $25 million. And so I was thinking, okay, how do I answer somebody? That's all I was doing, is trying to figure out, okay, if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, man, I looked at your budget, your reserve funds alone is $25 million.
yes, but those are department specific.
Correct. There
And they
could-
can only be used in those departments. So you don't have $25 million to do a water project.
Well, true that. I get that. I'm just saying, in my savings account, I'm seeing $25 million and I have certain pigeonholes to do it. And I'm just thinking, okay, if somebody comes up to me and says, dude, this city's got so much money, you got $25 million and I don't see it coming. And so, but at the same time, every month or every beginning of this, when we do our workshop, I get a review list of all the things and of what we've accomplished. And that's all.
I think, I'm sorry, okay. I think comparing it to the schools is not helpful. I think it may cause a little bit more confusion because for the schools, their, the primary expense is gonna be their FTE. And
Right.
that's kind of really, for financial people, not me, easier to estimate on a yearly basis. And if they needed any of those improvements on building or expanding or whatever, they're gonna do one and estimate there, do the work prior, estimate, and then go through with it if it passes. Whereas here, we're sort of having to divide out into the different compartments. And then we're estimating we might get this grant, we might get this loan, and they're all in those different departments. And so we, although on paper here, it may look like there's 25 million, there really isn't. Because if you go back and look at all of them, as far as how it was broken out, if we get this 2 million, right, then this is how much is gonna go into that contingency savings. This is how much would go here. And for us, we have engineers that are still doing some of that research, so we don't know the final cost for a lot of these things. And so that's where it makes it very difficult for planning and saying,
yeah, let's use up the 25 million because we don't know what the ultimate cost is gonna be. So we're just sort of planning ahead and estimating it until we get those numbers back. And that's why I think when we prioritize, like, here's what we wanna do. When we list those, then we're picking the top ones, and when the money runs out, we may not get to that last one. So I think that that's the difference.
Well, and I think it's important to understand too, that the city is physically responsible with taxpayer funds, and we just don't willy-nilly go out and spend the money. We're trying to spend it for projects that are important, that are needed. We're lucky. I'll tell you that right now, the city of Boardman's in a very good space in this day and age. There are cities around that it's all they can do to even come close to balancing their budget. We're gonna balance our budget. There's not gonna be an issue there. And we're gonna get a lot of
And we'll get a lot of stuff done.
needed projects done in the near future, so.
Okay, I'm done. Next.
Well, I think the other thing that I was trying to think, if you look back on your general fund in 2021, you barely had 880-some thousand. We didn't have a general fund reserve until maybe 5 years ago. If you want people to be good stewards of money, just because they have $1 million come in, they don't go out and spend $2 million. I mean, you just don't. This is the goal. This should be the goal for the city, to have nice reserves so that, like you say, if we want to spend $5 million on a new street, that I finally have saved to spend $5 million on a street or whatever you choose to do with it. But if your goal as a city is just to spend the money you receive every year, that's not a good steward of money. I can't believe that your taxpayers would think that is a goal for you. Because we could go out and maybe do a half of a project with the money, 1 year, just because we've got money and we think we ought to spend it rather than save it till we can do a really major project. And I think the other part is that our design and engineering is getting behind the amount of money that we want to spend. I mean, he's working day and night, but he can't produce enough written documents for us to go out to bid and to get work done, because it's like Columbia Avenue. We have the funds. There's not any thing about not having the funds to do that. He just can't get, and then you can't get people to bid, blah, blah, blah. So.
Don't know why. He just gave me the phase 2 book today, which is the one we're gonna be starting. And it isn't a co-binding, but it's this big. Of all his documents. So we do keep him busy.
Oh,
So we've gone past our 1 hour. Do you guys want to extend it and just finish this up?
Yes.
I make a motion to extend another 30 minutes. Okay.
All in favor? Oh.
Aye.
Sorry, not my show. Sorry, Heather.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed?
I'll be quiet.
Okay, continuing
Thank you, Bill.
on, page 35.
Page what, 35?
35 is our capital project fund. This is the fund that is only exclusively for the geo bond projects. The 10.3 million that you see for the beginning balance, that is all the geo bond money that we have left for this project. We anticipate spending it all. Like I said, phase 2 has already been awarded. Here in the next week or two, the pre-construction meeting for phase 2 will take place. And then shortly after that, the contractor will mobilize and get going on phase 2. We may or may not be able to complete the entire project in this proposed fiscal year, but if we don't, then we'll make that adjustment for the fiscal year afterwards. But that is the only thing that is included in this fund. Any questions on that? And page 38. This fund is exclusively for the debt of repaying the GO bond. So it's the tax dollars that come in. For the GO bond specific will go into this fund, and the payments that we make for the GO bond every year come out of this fund. So that is the only thing that is housed in this debt fund. And we're down to only having one. In prior years, we had a water bond debt fund and a sewer bond debt fund, but those two we refunded. I know we're used to refunding meaning something else. Refunding it was funded again. Kind of sort of,
Refinancing
like
loans.
refinancing, yeah, like when we refinance, our own loans with this GO bond, so that was included in there, so we're paying all that back.
So where do we get the other revenue? Does it come from taxes?
Because good question. So that is also from the Columbia River Enterprise Zone. In their agreements, there is wording in there for those companies to pay for any bond as if they were on the tax rules for the bond. And so this is what we're anticipating we will get from the Columbia River Enterprise Zone. But because it doesn't go through the tax assessor and come through as tax dollars, it's listed as other revenue.
Thank you.
But thank you, Chris. Yeah.
Is
Any-
that the same for the?
No, this is the only bond we have. And the word, yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions on this one? Okay, that is the end of all of our funds. In the back, you just have a summary, a couple of summaries, same numbers. One is a summary by fund, just totals. On page 40, and then the other one is by category on page 42. These categories are what are state required. These are the categories that we have to put our expenses in. And so you have that summary as well. And your last page, page 43, will have to do with part of what you will be approving.
Sounds good.
Our property tax levy. The city's permanent rate is $4.2114. And we would like for the tax assessor to collect that full rate for us. And then the levy for general obligation fund. Any other questions?
So do we have any public comment? No? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget for 2023-24 and split taxes.
I do have some, public comment, I guess.
Okay.
You guys had talked earlier in the general fund about doing a couple increases
Oh, yes.
that total about $6,000. Would that then lower the contingency in general fund by 6,000?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
good.
you're proposing to make those changes. Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. It does not change our ending budget.
Numbers.
Yeah,
You're just gonna increase those two line items and then decrease contingency in general fund.
yes,
So that would be the only change you're proposing.
yes.
Do we need to add a line here to motion with changes proposed?
Right, so what was proposed and what's presented and what the public has seen, you guys are gonna change tonight, so I would recommend when you make the motion, I would say as amended. By committee, whatever.
At the end would be fine.
Yep. See,
So I'd like to move that the City of Boardman Budget Committee approve the proposed City of Boardman budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
As amended.
with the amendments. In the amount of $74,207,368 and approve property taxes at the rate of 4.2114 per 1,000 of assessed value for the permanent rate tax levy. And in the amount of $1,368,781 for the general obligation bond levy.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so motion passes.
What was our budget for last year? I just off of this number here. Remember, it says 74 million. Oh, is it in there?
Yeah, it was 63.
63?
Mhm.
Is that on? So what page is that? Page
You
40?
can see it on page 40.
It's just for my personal information.
Wonderful job.
Thank you.
I remember when it was only 30. Yeah. And it's not really that long
Well, 2021 was 27.
So are
There
there
it is. Not very
anything
long
else
ago.
or can we adjourn?
Oh, yeah, we,
No, we're good. Okay. The meeting adjourned at 8:30.
I'd like to tell you a story about a place